Shin splints are so frustrating. It's such a niggly little injury, but it can really hold an athlete back when it comes to training hard. And trust me, I know. I had shin splints pretty bad for about 2.5 years. But the lucky thing is, we've kind of reverse engineered a bit of a rehab protocol. We have a bit of a theory on what causes shin splints. So what happens is the tibialis posterior muscle gets overloaded, becomes inhibited, and starts pulling via the periosteum on the tibia bone. Overload can be caused by a whole bunch of things. A spike in training volume, generally having too much ground reaction forces, poor foot biomechanics, a poor running technique, for example like a heel strike, having weak calves, or generally having a weak lower kinetic chain through the lower body. But anyway, so this overload causes the tib post to lay down trigger points as a way of dealing with the stress. These trigger points then inhibit the muscle and further shut it off. Over time, that muscle being inhibited sends the stress into the bone, the tendon, and that periosteum. So you get into this vicious cycle of overload, inhibition, atrophy, and weakness, and you just go around and around and around. The same thing happens at knees. A knee gets grumpy and sore, whether it be the tendon or the patellofemoral joint, and then what happens is that VMO muscle, your protector, starts to shut off and become inhibited. And the same thing, you go around this vicious cycle of pain, weakness, and then muscles that aren't doing their job when they're supposed to be protecting us. The typical prescription for shin splints is standing calf raises, and lots of them. 3 sets of 30 single leg every day is pretty common. When you do a standing calf, because of the knee angle, your gastrocnemius is doing the majority of the work, meaning that tibialis posterior, the real shin splint muscle, isn't truly being challenged. With seated calf work, that gastroc becomes a much smaller player because of the bent knee. Now the soleus and the tibialis posterior can really come into their own. Our solution, and it originally came from Bruce Gray's Achilles tendinopathy methods, is to do heavy seated calf isometrics. Because that tibialis posterior and the periosteum is kind of acting the same way a tendinopathy would, whether it's a tendinopathy or a periosteopathy, it doesn't really matter. Basically it's collagen in distress, so the isometric work is going to have the same effect. Initially we did 3 position holds, 15 seconds in each, but we've just changed that. It's now way simpler. 3 sets, 45 seconds in a slightly plantar flex position. Focus on keeping that weight on your big toe, but don't let the arch of the foot collapse in.